Hi, Thomas here. Welcome to DreamSpeak. Before we introduce today's guest, we want to take a minute to say a very special thank you to all of you dreamers. This is our 20th episode, and behind the scenes, we've hit the first big milestone in the history of our show. Our community is growing, people are learning more about their dreams, and that is all thanks to your participation and support. Whether you're listening from Ashburn, Virginia, Boardman, Oregon, Denver, Colorado, Tappahannock, Virginia, Camborne, United Kingdom, Brussels, Belgium, Vienna, Austria, or Hong Kong, thank you so very, very much. And don't forget, dreamers, if you'd like to be a guest on the show and receive a free dream interpretation session, email contact@dreamspeak.us and say hello.
Hi, dreamers. Thank you for learning with us today on DreamSpeak. I'm Rika,
And I'm Thomas.
and this is the podcast about dreams that teaches you a complete system to help you listen to your dreams and get the guidance they're providing you every day.
Imagine this. You're face to face with a polar bear. The white beast opens its jaws and roars, so close to you you can see inside its mouth. Luckily, it's only a dream, but this dream really wants your attention. Our guest Heidi shares fearlessly, much like the fearless polar bear from the dream she had the night after a guided MDMA therapy session. As you'll soon discover, it brings major insight for her. Marriage, sex, polyamory, partnership, friendship, family. It all collides in this episode of the DreamSpeak Podcast. Our guest today is Heidi. And Heidi, we'd love to have you say hello to our listeners.
My name is Heidi, and I'm here today to kind of explore a little bit more of this internal journey that I have been on in the last year. And I feel called to understand my dreams in a deeper way, to help understand myself in a deeper way. And I was referred to you by my brother.
Your brother is a good friend of both of ours and a previous guest.
That's right. So I was able to listen to that episode, and part of what I'm kind of excited today is to kind of go deeper into the details that you might have.
So let's talk a little bit about how we approach this. And let us just say right off the bat, thank you so much for agreeing to be a guest. What is going to basically happen here is we will spend a little bit of time in open-ended conversation. So we'll talk a little bit more, and then we'll ease you into kind of talking a little bit about your spirituality or your curiosity about dreams or previous experience with dream work. And then you'll share the entire dream, even though we got a little bit of a taste of it in what you wrote. You'll just recap everything. It'll be great for us as well to hear more details.
When I was 28, I left Texas. And I was kind of like my mom, getting in that realm of workaholism where I just worked. And I struggled finding good relationships. I had just gone through that Millennium 3 program, that leadership program. And I went through that, and it just made me revisit all my choices. On a whim, I left a high-paying job. I had just bought a house 6 months ago, and I just left. And I went to the West Coast. No job, no plans, no nothing. I just left. And within about 4 weeks, I met the man I ended up marrying.
That's amazing.
But we joke about it because he talks about right before I moved, he was finally getting some clarity. Instead of thinking about what he didn't want out of a relationship, he started thinking about what he did want in a relationship. And then I showed up.
That makes me really happy. I feel like our story is somewhat similar. I think both of us were really in a very open place within ourselves, feeling good about ourselves and just feeling very positive about the possibilities of life when we came together.
Well, I had just gotten divorced after being married for 28 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I met Thomas like a month after I got divorced. One door closes and then another one can open.
And we were acquainted for a while.
Yeah.
And then everything clicked.
I have a therapist who is also really into dream interpretation. She's an internal family systems therapist, and she's really into Carl Jung and all his dream stuff. And so she really helps me sometimes with my dream interpretations.
That's great that your therapist offers that.
Yeah, she took me through imagining the meanings of all the people and things in the dream as aspects of outside of myself. And then she said, okay, now let's go back through it as if you're each character and yourself. Like, so she went really deep with me.
Great.
That sounds like it could have gotten some really neat results. Is that kind of similar to the modality of internal family systems as well, except applied for dreams?
Sort of. Internal family systems is almost like each pulling emotion that you might have or kind of trigger or way that you feel like something else is driving and not really your higher self. Say you have a habit or a way of responding. Sometimes internal family systems kind of says that it's like a part of you. It could usually parts are young and they're like children parts that something happened that was traumatic enough. And it doesn't have to be like extreme trauma, but something can happen that's traumatic enough that something apart creates something inside yourself to protect or to deal with what was happening. And that part will come up again and take control. And IFS is teaching you, it's like shadow work where you go one by one to each part and you nurture them and you mother them and you ask what they need and why they feel they need to take over and explaining to them, hey, I'm a 45-year-old woman now. I don't need you to take over. I've got this. Like, what would you rather be doing? And so, like, you find these little parts of yourself and soothe them and free them. And some parts, like, I have an angry part that gets angry and I always shove it down and push it away and say it's not okay. So to bring that part out and be like, you know, you can come out and I'm not going to push you away anymore and start dealing with those feelings. So that's what internal family systems is. It's really, really powerful.
I'm really glad that that's helped you so much. And it does remind me of certain aspects of the way that we look at people and dreams.
Oh, yeah. Your soul chooses a particular person for your dream that will help you to understand yourself better. It's, you know, it's what they represent for you. And it's not about them. It's always about you.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that other part about how disowned parts of yourself can be worked with that way with IFS. It's very similar to why aspects, which is what we call people and dreams, show up. They can be very much in the shadow and parts of us that are disowned that we're trying to understand, to call attention to.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the power of doing this dream work is that in our waking life, we may not have an awareness, you know, and our dreams will show us what's hidden in the shadow that we're not connected to.
You've called dream work shadow work many times.
I definitely do.
I've talked to my therapist and told her I had an appointment with you, and she was very interested to see what comes from it. I've looked into my dream a little bit with my therapist. I've looked into it with an app that I found. I still feel a little confused and wanted to go deeper. And I was hoping that we could do that here today.
And you were sharing with us that this dream was the message you got right after an MDMA session?
Yes. This particular dream was the night after I had done an MDMA therapy session. And then that night, this is the dream that I had. I am currently in a really challenging transition in my life. And when
It's okay. Take your time.
I was offered to go through this MDMA session, it was really beautiful. It really helped unlock a few things. But that night, I had a really vivid and strong dream that I woke up and remembered and wrote down. And I feel like it has something to do with the MDMA session, unlocking some unconscious things in my subconscious and trying to tell myself something.
Bet you anything you're right about that. We're going to find out. We're going to help you find out. It's interesting too, because we're also currently working on a video that's specifically about why we go through periods where our dreams are vivid.
Yeah, this MDMA session, I had this dream the first night, another really big dream the second night, and another really big dream the third night. And I can just tell that I'm like screaming and trying to catch myself's attention. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
That's really interesting. Other people that we have talked to that have had MDMA sessions have had powerful dreams, like right afterwards. So maybe that's a common theme. I really don't know.
I feel like with that medicine, with a guide, with the intention of going so deep and internal, usually I think they put a mask over your eyes and you listen to music and you just let come up what comes up. And I was able to have it recorded. And so you go back and listen to the things you say, don't remember what you said. There was a lot of really beautiful things that I encouraged myself and basically just really loved on myself. And it was a really beautiful experience.
Yeah, I'm really happy for you, because I think underlying the philosophy with which we look at dreams is that dreams tell us that we are sacred beings. We're beings with intrinsic value, and that working towards really unconditionally loving ourselves is one of the goals of living.
Yeah.
It sounds like you took some steps in that direction.
Yeah. We talked about shadow work earlier. There's a lot of things that are hidden in the shadows that we don't even know are affecting us. And it can be so simple and small. I had an experience where when I was doing some shadow work, I was a 6-year-old kid sitting in the bed, crying my eyes out, asking for my mom. It took me back to this experience of feeling like nobody cared and I was alone. That was traumatic for me, and it froze inside me. And there was something really painful that I didn't know I needed to deal with. Going back in that moment and realizing my mom was outside the door vacuuming, I was in trouble. I think I'd colored on the walls or something and was put in my room. And as a little kid, that just echoed through my soul and my being as something traumatic. It can be as small as that, to go back and heal those small pains. And that's kind of the work I've been doing. And I believe that dream interpretation helps with that as well.
There's so much that is in the shadow. We run these patterns that we're not even aware of, because of collected trauma over our lives or from childhood. The more we do this dream work, and we've been doing it for a really long time now, it's really surprising how much comes up all the time that you're just not even aware of. It's just there. And then the dreams show it to you, and then you have an opportunity to do something or not about it. It's just right.
Yeah.
But it gives you this amazing awareness of what's really driving your behavior.
I feel like I'm on a path towards, so the way someone explained it to me, it feels really beautiful, and it rings true. Is I'm in a hallway, and they said it's a really crappy and painful hallway where you're in between who you were and who you're going to be. And I'm stuck in that hallway trying to find out who I am and who I'm going to be.
So I think that we're probably ready to talk about the dream. Don't you think, Rika?
Yeah, I want to hear.
Heidi, why don't you just take all the time that you need to really thoroughly tell us what you can remember about this dream?
Okay. Do you want me to tell you from beginning to end, and then we'll take it part by part?
That's exactly what we like to do. We like to just let you narrate. And then when you're done with your recounting of the dream, we'll decide on some entry points.
Okay. So I remember I was inside a building with glass windows, and it felt like inside of a car dealership, like a car sales building, where it was kind of empty and cold, but filled with windows and you could see out. And outside the window was this giant white polar bear. And I remember seeing the details of like the yellowing from, just what you see in National Geographic. And his mouth opened really wide and was just roaring. And I remember seeing the flaps on the side of the mouth wavering, and he was looking up. And I remember he was roaring at something on the roof, and I looked around to see if anyone could help me. And I remember wanting help, and I didn't feel safe. And when I looked back outside, beyond the white polar bear, I saw a car that had 3 to 4 other brown bears on it, and they were all on top of the car, and they were like kind of batting at each other and playing. And there was a moonroof on this car. It's like a red Jeep. And somehow they opened the moonroof, and when it opened, a bear fell in, and at the same time, the roof collapsed, and all 4 bears fell inside the car. Somehow they just fell in. And I remember feeling like I needed to leave to find some help. And the next thing I know, when I come back, my mother-in-law was letting the bears in, and she was leading them inside another room. And and trying to talk to them. And I remember seeing, like, she thinks that she can communicate with bears. And I was like, oh no, that's dangerous. Like, don't talk to the bears. You don't know how to communicate with bears. Get out of there. And so I went to kind of pull her out, and I noticed that she had a shirt on, but no pants. She just had pantyhose on, and part of her shirt had been ripped. And I reached in and I grabbed her out, and I was like, you can't tame these bears. And when I was pulling her out, I noticed that a brown head was coming out of the door, and she and I put all our might against the door to try to keep the bears from coming out. And then I don't remember if we actually successfully got this door shut or not, but I kind of clipped to looking outside the window, and I noticed that the thing that the polar bear was angry at had fallen off the roof, and it was a silver fan, and like a desk fan, and it had been broken in half. And I looked farther out and noticed that there was a little boy chasing a toy, and there was one brown bear still out there. And he had noticed the little boy, and I got scared. Oh no, that boy's going to be in danger. And the brown bear started moving towards the boy, and then the dream ended. Or that's all I remember.
That's all, huh?
It was a pretty hefty dream. I must have been in a really receptive and open place to remember so much detail.
Yeah, that's great. So where should we start?
I have a feeling that this is what we might call a big dream, which is a more pivotal dream. And the way we really define that on a practical level is when we get daily guidance dreams, that guidance might just be things for us to look out for a few days or a week or maybe a month. But when we have a big dream, that guidance can be valid for years. One of the things that I think is an interesting place to start talking about is just the prominence of windows, because there's a bit of a symmetry in this dream, how there's windows in the car dealership type place, and then later you look out the window again. And windows are essentially means of awareness. And what's important to understand about that before considering the concept of awareness is understanding the notion of indoor and outdoor spaces. So indoor spaces in a dream are mindsets, and you can get a lot of information just from looking at the building or place that you're in.
It's interesting that there was a car outside, but I didn't see any desks. I didn't see people mulling around. It was empty white spaces, but in like a building that would remind me of a car dealership.
So what are your associations with car dealerships?
I think of a car dealership, I think of business, I think of people buying things and maybe a transition in their life, getting a new vehicle.
Have you had transitions in your life marked by changing vehicles?
Yes, very often. Almost every time I had a child, we would buy a different car. So yes, buying a car is a transition.
Why is it that you feel negatively towards the car dealership in the dream, do you think?
I would think that this current transition that I'm in right now, I'm very resistant to it.
How would you describe the transition you're in right now?
My current situation is for the last 2 years, my husband and I have been scrambling to survive our marriage. And
It's okay.
he's a very complicated person that has been through a lot. He just beats to his own drum. You can't assume anything that you know what he's thinking or feeling. And for the longest time, I've always thought I knew what he needed. And he is asking for open marriage, and it's something I can't seem to do.
That sounds really difficult.
Yeah, it's hard because it's more than just him being selfish and wanting something. I truly believe that he's on a journey of his own, trying to discover self-worth and value, a lot of curiosity about himself, and me standing in his way and saying, no, it has to be this way. He's like, but that doesn't feel right for me. And I don't want to lose you, and I don't want to lose him. But our needs are so polar opposite that I'm afraid I'll destroy him if I keep him from his journey, and I'm afraid he'll destroy me if I go along for his ride. So we've been stuck for 2 years trying to figure this out. And part of the MDMA therapy was hoping we could unlock something, that we could find some direction. How do we navigate this?
So you both did MDMA together?
He did it the weekend before by himself, and then I did it that weekend. And then you're supposed to wait for your serotonin levels to come back and wait at minimum 4 to 5 weeks and hopefully 3 months before you do it again. And we intended to do one together. So work on ourselves and then try to have a meeting of the heart in a session together. And in his session, it was even more clear that like this is his journey where he needs to go. And he wants to do it with me. And in my session, there was some clarity that I don't have to participate. I can be monogamous and allow him to explore what he needs to explore. But can I sit in a place of self-worth? Can I feel like I'm enough with my partner needing other people? Can I sit in the spaces of jealousy? And through my session, the answer is yes, but it has to be done very, very, very gently and carefully. And I'm angry that I have to do this.
Well, we really appreciate you sharing such profound material, and just take your time and be gentle with yourself while we talk through all of this. But there is important information for you in this dream. But it's really interesting that you talked about you guys growing your family together and changing vehicles, because there's no vehicle shopping going on, right? And so the first thing that I'm wondering about from this car dealership image is, because there's no vehicle shopping going on and there's an emotional vibration that doesn't feel good, I wonder if that's tied to that concept of transition you were talking about. And, you know, when you have a birth or a young child or a baby in a dream, it's like a new part of yourself, a new idea. When we give rise to something in our life that's significant and may change our life in the future, it's often represented as a baby or a child. And here you are in this mindset connected to when you have big changes in your life, you change vehicles, but it doesn't feel good.
It was a happy time. This is a painful time.
That feels like it could be a powerful indicator of something right off the bat. And all the rest of these things are going to inform that. If you can take a quiet minute to put yourself back into the memory of what it felt like being in that empty white space that felt like a car dealership, try to describe in a little bit more detail what the emotions were like.
It felt alone, cold, empty, and when I saw what was out the window, frightened.
Yeah, and it's important when you're interpreting a dream to honor the narrative, to honor the chronological order of things, because it's telling you how things are unfolding, essentially. It's almost saying this is the theme, and all these other things are going to enrich and connect to that theme. Yeah, those are some big feelings.
Yeah.
And then they lead straight to fear.
Yeah, for the last 2 years, it feels like I've been dangling over lava, and I've been frightened of this transition he's asked for. He's been patiently not participating in anything he wants to, while I sit here and consider and try to decide if I can or can't. But fear has overwhelmed my life.
Are you worried that it could destroy your marriage?
Yeah.
Is that your primary fear?
I think that there's a lot that has to do with feeling like not being enough, and that if I'm not enough, then when he finds somebody else, that they will be enough, and that he'll forget about me, that the life we have together, it's definitely a scarcity mindset. I am afraid to lose out on his time, his attention, his love, all of the things of what I value so much being gone.
I feel like maybe we could talk about bears.
Yeah.
They are a huge part of this dream.
Yeah. Brown bears and polar bears.
I'm curious of the difference of what one means over the other.
Well, we have some books by Ted Andrews that we often like to refer to when animals show up, both in our dreams and in our waking life, because they have a totemic significance. And bears have a lot to do with the unconscious. And part of that is because they hibernate, right? So they go into this deep place of deep rest or sleep. And so it's about bringing to the surface what's in your unconscious. So I think that's a big part of why the bears are in your dream. And polar bears are white, and they're the fiercest of all of the bears. And basically they have no fear. They're the apex predator. And another universal symbolism of the bear has to do with they love honey, and it's about finding the sweetness in life.
Yeah, that's interesting because I had a beautiful reading with a person who read my birth chart and talked to me about some of this stuff. And one of the things she told me is that this path that he's asking for will heal him. It will make him whole. And that I have the ability to possibly make it work and feel joy watching him be so happy. But I have to remember to think of me. What do I need? What do I want? And to take pleasure in the times that we are together and enjoy what it is that life has to offer me. And I'm forgetting all of that because I'm getting so wrapped up in the resistance of what it is that he's asking. I'm forgetting to enjoy life.
I think that's good. I also think a part of the dream that seems sort of settled or clear is right at the beginning when you look out the window and you have this awareness, which I'm assuming was probably a gift of the MDMA. I'm not positive about that yet, but I think it's a good theory that we should explore. So it opened the windows in this mindset that you were struggling with. And then as soon as you gaze outside, you see something that you find very frightening. But the thing is that we look at these totemic animals, the power animals, as universal qualities, and we have those things within us as well. And so it's fearlessness, essentially. That bear was pissed.
Very.
So I'm afraid to tell you, my dear, that's you. So pissed.
Yeah. I have what I call my protector part that wants to protect me from pain. And she is mean. She is really strong. She is really pissed. And sometimes when she comes to drive, I want to burn the house down and everyone in it. I'm fierce. I am very fierce.
You're the white polar bear.
Believe so.
So, I was saying we have to honor the chronology, but you can also play and kind of jump around because there are these connections. And so you said that you realized later in the dream what the polar bear had been angry about. And this is what we call an uncanny symbol because it's meant to get your attention. It's just really odd. So off the roof of the building falls a desk fan and it broke in half. Okay. So why would it make a polar bear angry? So the thing is, though, the reason this is an uncanny symbol is because it's so ridiculous that we'll probably be able to figure out just what it means. So let's give it a shot. The way that it works the best to unlock a dream symbol is you take the universal meaning and your personal meaning, you put those together. So have you seen a fan of that kind before?
No. It makes me think of an old-timey fan.
Why would a person have a fan like that?
They're hot and uncomfortable.
Have you ever seen something like that in someone's home? It could have even just been for a moment.
Not that I can recall. I feel like it's almost like a historical movie fan, like not reality.
I can kind of imagine what you mean, like a prop in a film, like some sort of noir movie where the detective is like in their office and the fan is blowing on them.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's interesting. One thing that we know is a big symbol in this dream is temperature, because a polar bear lives in an Arctic environment, and then you're talking about a fan to cool somebody off because they get hot. Essentially, what they mean on a universal level is when things are very hot, they're very active and they're moving a lot, and there's a lot of change in our lives. When you see symbols like ice and you feel cold, especially in a vivid dream when you can feel, it's because there's a lot of stuckness going on in our lives.
And so the representation of the polar bear being from the cold and the fan cooling somebody off, there's a lot of activity and stuckness.
Not sure about the juxtaposition of the fan and the cold yet, although those kinds of juxtapositions are really helpful in having our attention called to important things. But what I do feel confident about at this point is the stuckness part.
Being stuck for 2 years.
And the polar bear is super pissed.
Yes.
Oh gosh, I just figured out something about the fan. Because remember, the polar bear was angry at the fan.
Yeah.
It's because the fan is woefully inadequate for the level of stuckness that you're experiencing.
Absolutely. I have tried everything, every type of therapy. We even spent a 3-day weekend intensive that was hugely expensive. Like, we have tried everything to find where is the middle ground here? What can we do? Kind of MDMA was my last resort. Like, if this doesn't work, then I don't know what we're going to do.
Does that mean that you're considering divorce after that?
Yeah, we actually had agreed upon divorce a year ago and then felt that it was a rash decision and got to a place of like, can we find a middle ground? And neither one of us wants to give up on the other. And it's just so painful because he was monogamous for 12 years and we ended up in Portland where so many people are polyamorous. He got exposed to that world and in a way felt very identified with it and can't seem to see himself in any other light. Like, he has identified with it. And I keep telling him, oh, that's not necessary. I don't believe that that's who you are. I believe you're seeking certain things. I'm kind of diagnosing him, and then it causes more resistance to where he needs to find that out for himself. I can't tell him who he is and what he needs, and I have to choose to stand by his side and hold his hand in love through the journey, even though it's painful, or I have to let him go. And there have been times where I've thought maybe it's best to let him go. And there are times that I'm like, I can do this. I can hold his hand through this journey. So I had decided that the MDMA therapy might be my deciding factor of like, okay, I need to let this go.
No, it's a lot what you're going through. It's really hard to even imagine.
Yeah. The things that he has been through in his life make him one of the most beautiful spirits I've ever experienced. But he also has been through more trauma than I have ever experienced or known anyone who's experienced in my life. It makes his journey different. It looks different than mine. I'm being put in this fire of unconditional love. Like, what does that really mean? Does it mean that when it doesn't work for me, I leave? I don't believe so. So he's doing it in a respectful way. He's being honest with me and talking it through it with me and being patient and waiting to see if we can figure this out. Never pushing, never forcing, always being patient and kind and loving. So it's hard not to have some faith that my block, my resistance is just this absolute terrifying fear of all this stuff in me that's afraid to lose him and holding on to him and standing in the way of his journey. And I don't want to be that, but I also have to take care of myself.
Yes.
This is also probably a good place to mention that dreams, in our experience, they only talk about our own needs and our own development, which is just so interesting because obviously our life experience impacts us in so many different ways, especially our relationships with other people. But when it comes to the actual messages that we're getting from our dreams, they're always going to be about us because those are the only things that we can control. And they're messages for us about ways that we can live better and show up better in the world. We can see right up against the edges of the symbols in this dream that it's about what's going on in your marriage. But the guidance it's offering you is only going to be about yourself, things that you can choose to do.
Yeah.
The white hot anger, we've got that identified, but we haven't talked about the fact that white is a spiritual color. I mean, that's a pretty universally agreed on significance. Does that resonate with you, the idea that motifs of white are connected to purity and spirituality?
Absolutely. I thought about that with the bear, and I also thought about it with the interior of the building just being so stark white.
So that interests me because, again, with juxtapositions, they can really give you a lot of truth in a dream. You've got this very strong feeling of emptiness that you're dealing with, and you associate that with the kind of sterile building. But you don't associate any kind of sterile feelings like that with the polar bear's whiteness.
Yeah.
It's alive, right? It's vibrant. It's this wild, powerful force.
Absolutely.
So this is all talking to you about your spiritual essence and who you are, but it's basically seeming to say when you're in this mindset, you're trapped in this feeling of emptiness, but when you're the polar bear, you're not trapped. The polar bear has no fear. So it just interests me, Heidi. I feel like part of the message of this dream seems to be stand in your power as the polar bear and don't be afraid to fully express yourself. And maybe another way of saying that is if you can really feel in to the power of that animal, you can maybe draw on that instinctive wisdom as you're navigating this. It might be a bit about boundaries, about expressing, I'm not satisfied with this. This deal doesn't work for me. These are my requirements, and this is what I'm going to need. And just being sort of uncompromising. I'm feeling in my intuition, what would polar bear energy be like? And it feels pretty strong.
Yeah. I would have to say that I am a very powerful individual. You know, my brother, I have some of that as well.
Yeah, we definitely second that. He's a very strong individual. So do you want to say a little bit more about that, or do you feel like going in a different direction?
Well, I feel like I have been standing for 2 years in this place of that does not work for me. That does not work for me. But I've been doing it in a place of fear. And so I question, why doesn't it work for me? Like, I'm finally in this place of, well, if I can have these really detailed agreements of what works, what doesn't, what makes me feel assured, what makes me feel loved, making sure those things that I value aren't taken away, and that we go at a slow pace and he's patient and doesn't pull all these things away from me that I find important. Like, could I do this? Could I stand up and say, I need these things, he provide them, and then he also get what he needs? So I'm in a place of questioning right now of the narratives in my mind of what is, what isn't, who am I, what should be, what shouldn't be. And like I said, I'm kind of in this hallway of becoming who I'm going to become. And I think this journey is a big part of that. I almost appreciate this painful experience because I've grown more than I've ever imagined in a spiritual way and understanding myself better.
That is a gift.
It is. And I think that's why we're here, is to grow and to understand ourselves better. And we create all these experiences in our life so that we can do that.
Yeah. Since the MDMA in my mind is open, I've had like moments of just constant messages coming in of like, this is exactly where I need to be and what exactly I need to be doing right now. And allowing his journey is teaching me to let go and trust. And he's getting to answer the questions he has of who he is and what he needs, while he also has the support of a loving partner who believes him, who trusts him, who supports him. There have been some big epiphanies that have been changing since that MDMA session.
Is there anything in the universal energy of bears about mothering energy? That's something that I feel when I think about bears.
Yeah.
I think that given that small creatures like cubs or babies or whatever represent new and delicate parts of yourself, I wonder whether you feel a bit maternal towards your husband.
Oh, absolutely. My therapist actually has been working with me on allowing him to step into his own power, because we've been together for 15 years. And I do believe that he clinged to me like a life raft in the beginning. I had a very beautiful family that poured love into me, that was very supportive. He didn't have that. He didn't have love. He finally found that in me and was like, I better cling to this. I'm holding on to this so tightly. But he was lost and doubted himself and followed my lead with parenting. And I do believe that I wore the pants in family. I had more masculine energy. I think he needs to step into his own adulthood, his own masculinity, and I need to let go of mothering him.
So I was just looking in the Ted Andrews book, and he does talk about that the babies are usually born when they're in hibernation, and then they nurse, and then it said something about a 2-year cycle because the cubs are with the mother for a couple of years, and about working on things in the 2-year cycle.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it is.
I have had lots of different readings and of like totem animal oracle cards, or I have this beautiful friend that's an Indigenous woman. She holds a women's circle and she's done some shadow work, hypnotherapy with me. And every single time I pull a card or anything to do with totem animals, or even through that hypnotherapy, bears are always around. Like, it's always a bear.
Okay.
Why do you think that might be, Heidi?
I have 2 boys, and my love is very nurturing. I am a nurturer. I nurture my friends with love. I nurture my children with love. I nurture my partner with love. I do believe there's something about bear and maternal love. And the strength, I'm fierce. So I think it's both.
Yeah. Well, maybe we should talk about the brown bears.
I was just thinking that.
So there's a couple of symbols here that come together. There's this red Jeep, and there's these bears, and then they somehow open the moonroof and then kind of collapse the roof of the car and fall in, right?
Yeah, and the red is significant color too.
Can you talk about the meaning of red a little bit? Universal meaning?
Well, the universal meaning is the red is connected to the root chakra. So it has to do with safety and security and being grounded and feeling secure in your life.
The opposites of that, of course, because that's how dreams kind of work.
Right.
So potentially feeling scarcity,
Right.
feeling afraid, feeling
lack.
ungrounded.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think the red is significant there.
And you connected vehicles to your own family and rearing kids before. Can you share any associations with red Jeeps or Jeeps in general?
I think of that as freedom, adventure, being able to go out on the open road, out in the wilderness, out and having fun. So when I think of Jeep, I think of adventure.
Those bears didn't seem angry.
No, they were playful.
They were playful bears. So this is like another aspect of the universal meaning of bear, in which you also embody that, right? You said he can be very fierce but nurturing.
Yeah.
And so they accidentally basically destroyed this car, right? Just messing around.
Yeah.
Does that sound right to you? Do you kind of see that as the car getting severely damaged?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So cars are interesting because what we first learned as the universal meaning of cars was the physical body. And there are times that I still see that mostly makes sense in the dream interpretation. But the way I've come to understand vehicles like that is they're kind of showing us the way we're moving through the world, or ways that we possibly could be moving through the world. And so you're considering the possibility of, well, could this hypothetical future with my husband bring me freedom, adventure, and fun? Could it bring me more playfulness and more joy? And I think the fact that the car gets damaged may be sort of an indication that you are not convinced that it's actually going to go like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. One of the things that happened too in my MDMA session is I was on a boat, and on the deck of the boat, there was a door that was trapped in like a dungeon of the boat. And I had to tie a rope to it and heave that door off. And what came out was my wild spirit, my playful wild spirit came out. I freed her. And there's a theme that's been coming up in my life a lot about I'm not playful enough. I'm very serious. And I need to get more in touch with my feminine, my creative, my playful self that I've locked away.
Yeah, this is really complicated because we're talking about issues of fidelity and marriage vows and things like that. But there's also all these other nuances to the relationships, our primary relationships, right? There's playfulness and self-expression and mutuality, mutual support, and all of these different dimensions to our primary relationship. But one of the things I think that makes polyamory complicated is it's so incredibly complex. It insists on involving all of these different dimensions of the institution of marriage all at the same time, And that's part of the problem here, it sounds like, is you wanting to make sure that things don't come at you too fast and that things don't get overwhelming for you.
Yeah. That can be totally accurate. I have kind of also withheld a little bit that before the 2-year mark, we had a couple of years where I let my people pleaser behavior happen and I allowed us to date people together. We tried it for a while and I disassociated. I was drinking heavily. I was miserable. I was very unhappy. So I had actually experienced this before and it happened so quickly and it snuck up on me. And every time I turned around, I was like, how did I get here? And 2 years ago, I put my foot down and said, we're not doing this anymore. And I don't believe that my spirit and body wanted to be involved in that. I am a monogamous person. and I need to honor that. But I've been thinking I had to force him to be monogamous too for me to be happy. And I don't know if that's true.
But that's what you've been trying so hard to figure out and contend with all this time. And it is not simple.
No, this is the most complicated thing I've ever experienced in my life. If we move forward with polyamory, it will continue to be very complex. And you have to have high integrity, and you have to be honest, and you have to know how to communicate, and you have to know how to own what's yours, and have to really investigate like why you're having these reactions and responses. And it's complicated. It's one of the reasons why I don't want to do it, is because I'm kind of looking for ease and simplicity and peace. And I have thought forever that the complication of this is too much, and it won't allow me to have peace.
And I just validate what you just said. I mean, I just want you to know that really just makes sense to me. I feel empathy for you, and I just don't think that I could personally deal with that kind of complexity in my life, in my home life, in my personal life. It doesn't feel easeful to me.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm struggling with. He is also on a spiritual journey. He's just in a different place. And in my spiritual journey, I've been finding what has happened is like the music I used to listen to is now fallen away, and all I listen to is spiritual music that moves me in a spiritual way. The people that I had around my life, I just let the people who don't speak to me in a spiritual way, like don't move me in that way, I let them fall away. Like I'm not interested in violent movies or action. I'm like, let everything just kind of fall away, and finding this beautiful, peaceful place within myself and surrounding myself with that. I'm loving that. And my brother and I talk about it, and he's like, that's kind of what happens naturally on your spiritual journey. And I have stopped my husband in the middle of his journey, I believe, for him figuring out some answers. So I've stopped his journey that maybe in the last 2 years, he might have gotten to this place of figuring it out on his own, that he wants these things to fall away. He wants them to go. He is ready to release them. And he hasn't fully burned out that karma. He hasn't fully burned out those answers. And I've been stopping him from doing it. And so I wonder if this is a temporary trial to see if that's possible. I'm in so many different places, I honestly don't know where to go.
Of course, Heidi, of course. It's only natural. Like we said, this is so confusing and so complex, but I just want to really make sure I really heard what you just said.
Yeah.
That resonates with me. And you're going to make the best decision that you can. And then you won't know until some things play out. You won't know what's going to happen in the long run. But it sounds like the nourishment that you're getting from your own spiritual journey is really important.
Very, very. And, you know, I talked to my brother too, and like, I have this dream. I am looking for a partner that is on the spiritual journey with me, and I don't have to be the only one leading it. Like, sometimes I can wear the hat, sometimes he can wear the hat, but I feel like right now I'm leading that. He is on that journey with me, but he is not at the same pace, and that's okay. But my dream is to have someone who is invested in that with me, like going to Insight meditation community and surrounding ourselves with other couples and friends and children and community. And right now, he's focused on a different type of community that seems to be really focused on physical world and desire.
Yeah, it's a really good way of looking at it. And I think kind of a charitable way of putting it. And I think that's appropriate, right? It's exactly what you said, in my opinion. It's about karma, and it's about needing to learn different lessons. And it seems like you're starting to get some clarity about the kinds of lessons that you need to learn, or the kind of lessons you really deeply want to learn. And I'm a big believer, even from our dream work after all these years, that we're supposed to follow those authentic threads. When we feel that increasing peace and joy and centeredness, there's a reason. And we're supposed to walk in that direction, I think.
I believe it too. But I've also known that you go on sometimes a spiritual journey, and like friends and things fall away. Sometimes your most important relationships have to fall away too.
Yeah, this is not a peaceful dream, unfortunately. Yeah. There's not much peace symbolism in this dream. This is more about maybe what needs to fall away kind of stuff.
And that was a journey that I went through 15 years ago.
Yeah.
When my spiritual life changed, everything and everyone around me changed as well. And a lot of people fell out of my life at that time. But it also opened the door for my path, for me to follow the path that I was supposed to follow. But like you, I had so much resistance for years, really, because I had a good life and I had a good husband that I loved. But there were just big shifts, and I had to look at, how do I want the rest of my life to look?
Yeah. And
Like the next 50 years.
and then don't you also think, babe, that you ultimately just have to make up your mind and make a decision? And you did.
Yeah, but it took me several years to make that decision. It was very difficult, huge transition. And
there's pros and cons.
yeah, it could have gone differently. And maybe that would have been okay too,
But you're happy with how things turned out.
I am. And I'm glad I made the choices that I did. But going through a transition like that, no matter what you decide, is really hard. And you have to face all these things about who am I and what do I want out of life?
Yeah. I don't want to stay together for the kids either. I love this man, but I have to take them into account too. I keep feeling like the one scenario I haven't tried is to really be strong in who I am and what I need, and stand in my gut values and where I put my body and where I put my mind and where I put my soul, and be this example for him and let him have his journey. Don't control him. Let him be free. Let him figure out what it is that he needs. And if it's too painful, too hard, then I know my answer.
That sounds really brave. This is just such big material, Heidi. There's one really important part of this dream we haven't talked about yet.
Yeah.
It's your mother's presence in this dream.
My mother? Oh, my mother-in-law. Yeah.
Oh, is your mother-in-law? Interesting. Okay. It's probably still going to be what we call a superconscious aspect. So I think we should talk a little bit about what that is and try to bring you up to speed on that. It might not be, though. So as we go through that scene, I think we'll be able to discern whether it's superconscious or not, or potentially even a hybrid of a regular aspect and a superconscious aspect. That happens sometimes too.
Okay.
So the model of mind that we use to understand people and dreams is essentially 3 major levels. So we have our conscious mind, where we house our intent and where we set the tone for how we interact with the world and the things that we impact, the things that we choose. Then we have our subconscious mind, which is deeper. It has a lot to do with our impulses, our motivations for doing things. The way that those 2 parts of our mind relate is essentially, the consciousness is the seed planter. We can plant a seed. Where that seed goes is into our subconscious. And a lot of times we don't even really realize, or we're not aware that that seed is taking root, getting nourishment from the subconscious and growing until something in our life changes. And so that's kind of the process of living. It's a little hard to understand at first, but we believe that we're thought beings. We have free will, and we can impact the world and our lives with our thoughts. And so when we set an intention, we have the power in our subconscious to bring that about eventually. Now there's this much deeper part of ourselves that's still connected to who we are, but it's much more connected to source energy or to the divine. And we think of it as being deeper than our subconscious, and we call it the superconscious. That's the term that we were taught. It's a little confusing because super means above, but the reason that it's called superconscious is because it's so all-encompassing. It's divinity, it's source energy, but we're plugged into that. At the base of who we are, the most basic, deepest, most beautiful part of who we are, we're divine, right? We have a spark of that divinity. So we're also connected to this 3rd part of our mind called the superconscious. When our parents show up in dreams, and there's other kinds of people too, sometimes police or judges or teachers that we might have had, these are superconscious aspects, and they operate in a different way in our dream messages than most other people, because they're there to give us messages about the way we're relating to truth and to divinity. And it's interesting because they don't directly represent God or divinity. It's more of, how are we relating? What are we thinking about the deepest questions of the universe? And so, because it's your mother-in-law, and because of the nature of some of the things that happen in that scene, I'm thinking that this is going to be a superconscious aspect, or maybe even an inverted superconscious aspect. And we'll delve into that. I think it'll become more clear as we talk about it. But if it does turn out to be a superconscious aspect, we'll aid you in understanding how to unpack that, because it's not as simple as just saying this is a part of me. It's true that it is, but it's trying to give you information in a special way about bigger questions and the way that you're carrying those questions through your life. So why don't we talk about that scene? If I remember what you told us, essentially your mother-in-law had let the bears inside. Is that right?
Yeah. And only the brown bears. The white bear was not let in.
And I'd imagine that's because the white bear is so fierce and dangerous.
Yeah.
There's no hope of reforming or taming the white bear. That's not happening. You don't get to come in. But your mother-in-law had a mistaken idea that she could tame these browns.
Yeah.
And you felt strongly it was a mistaken idea, right, Heidi?
Yeah.
Okay. And see, the thing is, I think trusting your intuition is pretty key. And that emotional energy that symbol carried when you said you were telling her, you can't do this, you don't know how to communicate with these bears. I feel like that was your wisdom speaking, like your common sense or whatever you want to think about it. You know that that's not a realistic possibility. That's the way I took it. And we need to explore. That might be wrong, but it felt right when you were narrating the dream before.
My mother-in-law is a very complex character, so I am really interested to see where this goes.
Can you tell us a little bit about her? We're going to want to capture one or two salient qualities of this person, because they're actually going to be directly tied to parts of you. They're going to be describing you, essentially. So can you just kind of do a little free association for us, and maybe we'll get the qualities that she's embodying?
Yeah.
So for her, she lives with us and has for 12 years. She is a medium. She has spirits who speak to her on a regular basis. She's seen spirits since she was a baby, and she has a very deep connection to spirit, spirituality, and divinity. Yet she also is in this human world with having a human experience. And she and I relate on a very deep way of this people-pleasing, almost getting taken advantage of and not standing up for yourself. So she represents that for me. She also talks to me, tells me that she can speak to animals. And so I don't know if there is any kind of literal thing going on there, but she mostly represents almost like a little bit of weakness and spirituality.
That's great. I'm not totally sold on the idea that this is a super conscious aspect yet, but I'm leaning that direction. So let's take the next step here. You did a great job with that, by the way, for not having really used the system of dream interpretation. You did great. So we've got plenty to work with here. Now, you can see your deeper spiritual side in this aspect of yourself really clearly. And spiritual gifts is kind of what comes to mind for me. It's like it's showing you have spiritual gifts. Do you feel that you have spiritual gifts?
Yes.
Me too. Yeah, I can just feel it, like from your heart. And then this idea of transgression of boundaries, weakness, getting taken advantage of for people pleasing.
Yeah.
You have that too.
Yeah.
I have this feeling that the way super consciousness plays into this is you believe that that's kind of a woman's role or something. Some older ideas that you probably picked up from modeling when you were a child.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting because my mother was the income earner and she was the one who ran the family. But I grew up in a very religious household. She didn't go to work until I was 11. So my really young child self knew that the woman had a place in family and that that's the role of the woman, to sacrifice for everyone else. Even when she went to work and had control over the family, she sacrificed herself. I believed she sacrificed herself for everyone else.
Okay. So with all due respect, because I know that you've already delved very deep into this and I know that you know what I'm about to say. I don't want you to feel like I feel that I'm presenting some amazing revelation on a silver platter that you've never done before. But that pattern is obviously perpetuating through you in your marriage.
Yeah.
That's probably what we call a dharmic issue for you. Are you familiar with that term?
It's kind of like the lesson I'm trying to learn by reincarnation type of thing.
Yeah. And even if we set aside reincarnation, I just consider it a very evocative and convenient term when we're talking about these philosophical issues. It's like underwriting the belief that we have that everybody's life has some purposes and there's lessons that we're here to learn. And it feels like this is a big one for you.
Do not sacrifice myself for everyone else.
100%.
Yeah.
Do you feel that that's one of your missions, to learn how to stop doing that?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, then there you go. So we're circling right back to you. And this must be one of the reasons you had this big dream after your MDMA session, because it wants you to feel really confident that you were right in your feeling that you and your husband are here to do this work together through these difficult times. This is the vehicle.
Well, part of the one thing that he's actually told me, that 2-year mark where I stood up and I said, like, we are not doing this anymore. That was a big moment. Like, I risked losing my marriage. I risked losing everything for standing up for myself and what I believed in. And he said that, from that point on, I stopped drinking. I started taking better care of myself. I really focused on my spirituality, and like everything changed for me. And he told me it was an inspiration for him to watch me take care of myself and put myself first.
Wow. That's really impressive. So you believe in karma and reincarnation and things like that?
Yeah.
Do you believe that it's possible that a person can have karma and heal that karma with someone else's aid, and then the relationship ends?
I've never thought of it not that way, no.
And that's totally fine. I think both Rika and I, to different degrees, sort of think that that can happen, where it's like...
Yeah, I think anything's possible. And that sounds pretty on point. I have also gotten like this really strong message. You talked about gifts, and there was talking about purpose and why I'm here, and honoring deep soul bonds and sharing healing with my soul family is an important facet of my purpose on earth. That also kind of rings true for me in a way. There's some sort of depth of connection with this person that I feel goes beyond one lifetime, and almost like standing as this beautiful witness for each other through the hardest, most complex time in both of our lives in some way is a healing.
It's beautiful, Heidi. My heart is really opened by hearing you say that.
So it could be either way. It could be that we served our purpose and moved on, and it could be that I'm here just to stand in this fire. One thing my brother has told me that rings true to me too is you were meant to learn a lesson. And if you run away from it and you find another partner and you go through all this connection and growing, this lesson is going to come up again, and it's going to be just as hard and just as painful. And you can learn it now, or you can learn it later.
Well, I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. And I think that's true. The lessons that we're here to learn, we're going to learn them one way or another, or we can choose not to learn them if we want. We do believe in reincarnation. And I just think if you don't do it this time, you're just going to have to do it another time. And maybe that's not so bad. I don't look at karma as being punishment. I just look at it as cause and effect in the choices that we make, because, well, the way I look at it, we want to become one with God again. And so we have to go through all these lessons. Being a human is not easy.
Right, Heidi?
Oh, no, it's super easy.
I was also going to offer too a thought that might be helpful or hopeful, which is, I think within our relationship, which has been like 13 years, that we actually have cleared karma, finished, and started again. In some, like, it's like we've been through cycles of things that we had to resolve together, or that we could help each other resolve, probably from past lives. And then it's like when that material was finished and we both felt like we had achieved something, there was more, right? It's a whole other cycle of a relationship. Yeah,
there is. But actually each of those difficult times that we went through helped us to be stronger and improved our relationship. But
we kind of had to risk it all, I feel. Those are really touchy times.
Yeah.
I think we absolutely could have lost each other, but then it strengthens you somehow.
Yeah. There is also some book that I have read called Love Between Equals, and it talks about this. Most relationships start with this illusion and projection, and every relationship comes to a point where it's disillusioned, and you're like, oh, you're not who I thought you were. You're not me. I assumed these things about you, and all those veils drop away. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm married to a stranger, and how can I be married to this person? And it's so painful to accept the disillusion. And then once you get through that, and you really truly go, oh, I know who you are and I love you. And now I can actually honor who you are instead of assume who you are. And that becomes this deep, true, powerful love. And not a lot of people make it through that disillusion period.
So, Heidi, are you up for returning a little bit more to the scene with your mother-in-law?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm getting increasingly confident. I think this is a super conscious aspect. And so what that means, again, is like, this is about the way that you're viewing not only maybe some part of yourself, but divinity and the way you're relating to divinity. So what we found in dream interpretation is that we often get messages either about the masculine or the feminine side of the universe, so to speak. And so when we're getting messages about the feminine, some of the qualities of the feminine divine are like the rich, infinite variety of the world around us, the universal quality of nurturing, of love, of mercy, creativity. Nothing else is leaping to mind right now. But the point is, we have attitudes that color our way of relating with those very fecund and powerful forces, and our way of honoring or dishonoring those forces in the world and in our spiritual journey. And we had talked, and I think really hit a vein of meaning about your dharma of growing past sacrificing yourself, and how there were some beliefs that you developed around the role of what women are supposed to do and stuff, and what they're supposed to be willing to give up.
Yeah.
So another level of meaning here, I think, that is probably good information for you to come away with, is that colors your spiritual journey and maybe puts some limitations on your worshipful study and growth in your wisdom, because you feel like that weakness is inherent to the mother divine, to the universe. Like it is like a fundamental flaw in the way that the universe is put together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I could sense that.
Our limiting beliefs on ourselves about stuff like this, they limit our entire way of looking at the world around us, looking at divinity, and therefore they impact our spiritual journey. So if we can take these limiting beliefs off of our eyes, we can have a much richer spiritual life too.
I think that makes sense. I don't quite know how deeply that impacts my spiritual life, but I do know that I have felt disconnected from the feminine. I have felt disconnected from feminine energy, my own femininity, almost like it's a weakness. Yeah.
You got it, Heidi. Yeah, that's the message right there. I mean, it's not the only message, but one of the most important messages from this dream is what you just said.
Then it's not a weakness. It's just a powerful energy I haven't really tapped into.
Yeah, it's recommending, it's endorsing to you that you tap into that.
I feel very strongly that that's in alignment with a lot of messages I've been getting. And when that free spirit came out of the boat in my MDMA therapy session, she was very feminine, very like long, flowy hair, beautiful skirt. Like I don't wear dresses. I'm not super girly, and flowers in her hair, bare feet, just kind of like a wild woman.
That is really cool.
That gives me goosebumps. That's powerful.
So not only is she a free spirit, it was unlocking my feminine. Yeah, I believe that. I've always been confused of how to tap into that. The sensuality of femininity as well.
Well, for me, when I went through these big shifts in my life, I brought dance into my life. And that really helped me to tap into that sexual feminine energy.
You know, it's funny, the time in my life around 2-3 years ago, I found myself surrounded by these beautiful women that I deeply bonded with. And so they are a big support system. And we were all involved in a community that had nothing to do with spirituality. And now, one by one, all of us have gone into a spiritual realm and journey, and we're all supporting each other in that way. And I have a girlfriend that likes to go to, what is that? It's sort of something dance. Ecstatic dance. And I've gone with her 3 or 4 times. And my shy self struggles with the feminine movements. I love to dance, but when I dance, I'm more to the beat rather than a flow. And I'll see women in there really in touch with their femininity and that soft flowing movement, and I don't understand or relate to that. So maybe it could be a place that I could try to tap into that more.
Well, I think that's a great idea and a great way to help you, looking for things to help you touch into that. And it's very powerful. Thomas and I actually host a monthly ecstatic dance because nobody offered it where we live. And we used to doing that practice in Dallas, and we need it. And
we can't do without it.
Yeah. And
because of you. It's all your fault.
Yeah.
You got me into this.
It's very resistant.
You got me in touch with my feminine side.
Yeah. We need it. And so we offer it once a month because we need it, and it's good for the community. And a lot of people come who have never done it before because it wasn't offered here, and they're just really surprised by what it does for them. Helps them to
get you need a body movement to get some of that, shake that energy off.
Yes.
We very much feel like that. And the other thing I would say is I totally embrace and accept your discomfort, but I think that you just soaking in that energy and seeing those women that you sort of want to emulate, I think it does just become a part of you. Repeated exposure really helps. It took me a lot of dances to find my movements and what I wanted to do in self-expression.
And then eventually he was like, can we do this for a whole weekend? Of course there are, but
one of the best things I've ever done.
Yeah, very powerful. So we highly recommend that.
So that's a great recommendation, but there's so many things you can do. I think the main thing is you can now take that piece away with you. You're not wanting to do that for an idle reason. This is going to help you.
And you're already tapping into it.
Yeah, there's a book that my therapist also recommended, something about wild woman, and it's something that has, in the last couple of months, has a theme that keeps showing up. So I think I haven't been listening as closely as my dream wants me to listen.
You feel, are you steeled for the journey? Or are you feeling good about where you think this will take you?
Yeah, I feel great about where that will take me.
Awesome. That's incredible. Well, I'm so glad. And wow, this is such a deep dream, Heidi.
A lot to it.
It means a lot to us that you shared so much. You are an excellent sharer. You're really very good at making yourself vulnerable. It's really admirable.
Yeah. It's really hard for a lot of people to do.
How do you do with taking compliments, Heidi?
I am so at it. It feels good, but sometimes it's hard to take in.
Try to take it to heart, please. It's true. Quite lovely and really just such an evocative conversation. I really feel very enriched by having been able to be a part of talking about your dream.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate the effort that you brought, the clarity that I was seeking with what I'm trying to say and hear. And I really, really appreciate it. And I believe the dream happened and my brother told me about y'all, and it's just click. Meant to be.
We agree. That's beautiful. Well, it has been amazing talking to you, and thank you.
Do you feel complete with your dream?
I do. I feel complete.
And it's been just lovely getting to know you a little bit, and just glad you got so much out of it.
Yes. Thank you to you both very much.
Thank you all very much for joining us on DreamSpeak, and we look forward to learning with you more in another episode.
You can find this podcast on all popular streaming services. Email us a dream today at contact@dreamspeak.us. Check out our YouTube channel for a free introductory dream course. Connect with DreamSpeak for even more learning. Our socials are in the description. Our theme music was composed by me, Rika. This podcast does not constitute medical advice. If you have concerns about your well-being, talk to your doctor or a mental health professional.